Hello, today I'm going to tell you about how I found out I have a pituitary tumor. And before you start freaking out, no, it is not cancerous. So, I guess I should start off with how I found out I have a pituitary tumor. So, this all started when I started having really bad anxiety in December and November of 2018. So, on my way to class, just driving on my way to school, I would just break down in tears, out of nowhere. I didn't understand why, but one moment I was fine, and the next I was just bawling, tears rolling down my face. Or sometimes I was just really nervous and panicky. I didn't understand why. And even in class this would happen, not the crying part, but I would feel really panicky, and sometimes I'd hot flash and I'd just start sweating really bad out of nowhere, or my vision felt blurry or went kind of in and out as I was sitting there, and I had a really hard time concentrating, and I wasn't really sure why that was happening. So I went to the doctor because I was I have a really bad anxiety. I've always had anxiety, but I never had it that bad. I was struggling. Oh, and I also was having moments where I just be really upset for no reason. If my brother did anything, I just got mad at him, and it was for the dumbest reason. For example, if he dropped a slice of cheese on the floor, I was just why would you drop a piece of cheese on the floor? Why would you do this to me, Joe? That's so mean. And I'd be really mad, really mad, just over a piece of cheese, I don't even know, over the smallest thing. And it was just crazy, and I was I don't know why this is happening to me. I literally couldn't control it. So went to the doctor, I got a test done. The test results came back normal, and I was huh, well, guess it's just me. Maybe I'm just stressing a lot. And the doctor was yeah, it's probably just stress, because stress can cause a lot of problems. Stress can be really dangerous to the body. But the thing is, I wasn't sure why I was stressing. I didn't know why these things were happening to me. I was fine. There was nothing to be stressed about. I mean, I was in school and I was looking for a job. I guess those are stressful, but I wasn't stressing about them. I was I'm good. I'm not worried about anything. But for some reason, I was just randomly panicking and feeling stressed. So they put me on buspirone. I even saw a therapist for 2 sessions, but it didn't really help me. And the only reason I only went for 2 sessions was because of some family problems, so didn't get to go. But yeah, I also wasn't on the buspirone for very long. But anyways, moving on. So January of 2019 comes by, and I miss my period. I look it up and I'm it's not that big of a deal. Periods are irregular, sometimes this happens. And I'm it'll be fine. But for me, it probably should have been an alarm, because I've always had a very regular period. I've always had a very light period, and it's always been pretty easygoing. I feel pretty lucky in that aspect. But then February came by, and I ended up missing my period again. And then March came by, and I missed it again. And at this point, I'm starting to think, okay, this is a little more serious. This isn't normal. So I go to the doctor, I tell him that I'm missing it, and I told him about the anxiety, and they're well, maybe stress is causing it. But I get some more blood tests done, and my test results come back, and I have high DHEA, I have high prolactin, and I have low estradiol. I also had low platelets, but that's not as relevant anymore, because I got retested for that, and they think it was just a fluke. But I want to mention it just in case. Who knows, maybe someone else with a brain tumor had this, and maybe it was serious. I don't know. I think it was a fluke, because they never once have come back abnormal like that again, but I find it still kind of weird. But anyways, yeah, I had high DHEA sulfate, and I had high prolactin, I had low estradiol. So knowing all this, it was kind of random, and it was really abnormal for a person of my age. I was only I was still 21 I was still 20. I was 20 at the time, or had just turned 21. Yeah, somewhere around there. So, a person my age should not have estrogen in the level of a menopausal woman. So, I go home, do some research, and I'm like, what causes high prolactin? Because that was the most abnormal thing. Because when people have high prolactin, it's usually because their body's getting ready to produce breast milk for like having a baby. Like when you're pregnant, it usually goes up. I wasn't pregnant though, and I had never had a child. I also wasn't producing breast milk, which was also like why I was shocked that I had high prolactin. And I never did produce breast milk, and I'm thankful for that as well. So, anyways, I look it up. I eliminate lots of diagnoses that I found because they just didn't seem realistic at all for me. And the one that stuck out the most to me was pituitary tumor. And I always had that kind of in the back of my mind. And I was like, no, that's crazy. Like, I wouldn't have a pituitary tumor. But I was like, this is the only thing that kind of makes sense with, like, what's going on with me. But I still was like, it's probably not. So, I go to the doctor and I'm like, okay, I want to see a gynecologist and an endocrinologist. She's like, yeah, that's a good idea. So she refers me to a gynecologist and an endocrinologist. I get in with the gynecologist first, and she doesn't really help me. I tell her what's going on, and she's just like, if you had high testosterone, then you have PCOS. And I'm like, okay, but why do I have high prolactin? And she's like, you probably just have PCOS, you have a hormonal imbalance, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, are we going to get tested for testosterone? And she's like, yeah, we're going to test your testosterone. If it's high, then you have PCOS. So I get tested for testosterone, and it was high. And so she's basically like, you have PCOS. And she was just going to put me on birth control. And I was like, I don't really want to do that, because like I'd done a lot of research before this, and they said that if a doctor tells you have PCOS, it's usually like a warning sign of like don't listen to them, because like there was no test done other than just me having a hormonal imbalance, and she automatically assumed I had PCOS, which I still don't know completely if I have PCOS till this day, but I'm soon to figure out. Anyways, so she doesn't help me really, and I go to the endocrinologist, and I tell him what happened, and he still wants me to figure out if I have PCOS for sure or not. I've also been tested for like Cushing's and diabetes and lots of other conditions, and I don't have any of those, but so far I still don't know if I have PCOS. I've yet to figure out. But I do have a pituitary tumor. But anyways, continued to how I found out I had a pituitary tumor. Went to an endocrinologist, I told him what was going on, and I was like, I think I might have a pituitary tumor because of the high prolactin. And he was like, yeah. And he ordered me an MRI. I got an MRI, and the MRI came back, and I had a pituitary tumor. And it almost was a sense of relief, because I had been struggling for like over a year, like trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And like when I found out, it was more relieving than scary, because I was just so thankful to know what was wrong with me and like how I could like take control of it. So I was diagnosed with a pituitary tumor, and a pituitary tumor is just like a growth on my pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is a very tiny gland, like towards the bottom of your brain like behind the optic nerve, which can be dangerous because some people's are so big that it presses against the optic nerve and it can cause them to go blind. Mine is on the smaller side, so I wasn't as at risk for that yet. And mine is the type of tumor that you don't want to have removed surgically, because if you surgically remove it, then it's just going to grow back. So there really wasn't no point, so I went on medication. He treated me with cabergoline, Cabergoline usually has really bad side effects, and a lot of people that go on cabergoline tend to have a really hard time with it. For me, I had a really good experience. It didn't really make me sick at all. I mean, occasionally I feel a little nauseous, and I still have headaches occasionally, but other than that, it's a lot easier life now than before cabergoline. Like, I struggled so much before I was on medication, before I was diagnosed. Like, I didn't even feel like myself anymore, and I couldn't control who I was. Like, my hormones were literally in control of me. But like I said, a lot of people that are on cabergoline don't have as good of an experience as I've had. Right now my symptoms are just occasionally headache. My periods did start coming back after being on the medication for a few months, but now they're very heavy and they're painful, and I've never had periods like this before. Like, they're like really bad. I also was like smelling smoke randomly. That's also a thing that I've found out that a lot of people with tumors tend to have. They end up smelling like random smells, like hallucinating random smells, which is kind of weird. I still don't really know why we do that. But what helped me the most through this was joining a support group on Facebook. There's lots of pituitary tumor support groups. I recommend joining them because it's just other people that are going through what you're going through, so they can answer your questions. I also watch YouTube videos, and that's part of why I wanted to make a video, because watching the videos kind of gave me hope and seeing how other people's stories were like. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and ask me, and feel free to let me know anything that I should know. Thank you.